Welcome back to We Need to Talk Now, presented by AT&T. I'm Alicia J, here with Erica L. Ayala. And Erica, man, it was quite the weekend in women's sports. I feel like we're saying this every single time, but especially in the WNBA. And today we're going to talk about Betnijah Laney-Hamilton going to the Washington Mystics. We also have a recap of the 98-87 win by the Minnesota Lynx over the Las Vegas Aces. That was right here on CBS. We have a roundup of all the news in the WNBA because it is vast, okay? There's a lot going on. As always, we have our guarantee of the week. We love our guarantee of the week, so get ready for that. We always like to hear your opinions on that one too. And then we will also update you on the WNBA discussions around transgender athlete participation. But before we begin, make sure you're locked in on every single level because this W season is crazy. There's a lot going on. We have updates for you. We're jumping on for emergency pods, and we want to make sure that you're locked in. So make sure you do all the things so that you're right here with us on We Need to Talk Now. And speaking of We Need to Talk, Erica, we need to talk about Betnijah Laney-Hamilton going to the Mystics. This is something we talked about, right?
We sure did.
We definitely talked about this. A lot of people in the comments talked about it as well. And I love to see this, Erica. When I was seeing all of the clips, especially one, I think we have it, of her just with the team and just how it was straight up off the bat.
I mean, it was great. I think, what I saw from those clips is just a joyful Betnijah Laney-Hamilton. And that is very similar to, or is exactly what we heard from Sonia Citron at All-Star Weekend. She was talking about how this team prioritizes joy and that it comes from the top, comes from their coach. We see the celebrations, him literally diving onto the floor, all of the things. They have a lot of fun. They also have fun in teasing each other like sisters would do, right? Like, stop singing in the nobody's trying to hear all that, and I think now adding Betnijah, unfortunately, it doesn't seem like we've seen much joy from her. There was a lot of emotion when she didn't realize or was not given any indication that she would be a DNP coach's decision right around the Commissioner's Cup. And then effectively, we after that Toronto game, didn't see her at all in the lineup. It has been interesting to hear the New York Liberty talk a little bit about that, especially Chris DeMarco. We have not heard from Jonathan Kolb, but Chris DeMarco indicated that some of these conversations were beginning that had started, in the beginning of the season, which is counter to what we were hearing at the time. Again, we had our emergency podcast. We went into that. I don't like how things went down. And I do think this is a good landing spot for Betnijah. It's a fun team, a team that prioritizes fun. And when they step in between the lines, they prioritize playing hard-nosed defense. They prioritize getting the ball to the person that's going to set them up best offensively, and they prioritize winning in their way. We heard from Sonia when we interviewed her at the Obama Presidential Center that they feel like there's no pressure on them. They want to have fun. They are going underrated, and they're just going to go and play their game. But now to add a veteran presence, we've already seen Betnijah Laney-Hamilton in the huddle. She did not dress for her first game, with her new team, but she was present. She was there for the most recent Washington win, and you could see she was talking to them. She was engaging them. They were, souping it up. They trust her. They know what she's brought to the league, and I just think this seems like the right fit. If clearly things did not work out in New York, and it seems like they were really bubbling over since the beginning of the season, this seems like a right fit. And it's a little bit of a balm. For me, I can only imagine what it's like for her, given that it really didn't go down in a way that it probably should have.
Yeah. It seems like the right fit. It also seems like what she deserves as a player. When, seeing that clip of her in the huddle, we talk about the joy. We talk about seeing them excited to have her there. That was the other thing. But we also see her face as it's lit up, being able to talk and lead a team, and also just showcase, I can't wait to see her out there because just showcase the player that she is. And we know that she's been, right? The Mystics are currently on a 7-game win streak. literally, that it's amazing. We've talked about them from the beginning of the year, that they're not a team that you can go in and just think you're going to get a win, because they're going to try and win, and they do get a win many times. And you see that reflected in this win streak, their overall record. But it just begs the question, when you look at all of this, and just having Betnijah there now too, having that veteran presence, and the play that she brings to the court, are they the hottest team in the W right now?
Well, the answer is yes, especially with the Sparks taking down Minnesota, so snapping their win streak. The Washington Mystics are absolutely the hottest team. They have a 7-game win streak. That's the most by any team right now. And I think it's going to be really interesting to see how they play in their next few games, because they will play Las Vegas in 2 consecutive games on the 11th and the 13th. And I think this is huge, because we've seen the Aces drop, we've seen A'ja Wilson drop 38 points for the Las Vegas Aces, and that not be enough to beat the Washington Mystics. So, they're going into hostile territory here. We do know that A'ja Wilson, Chelsea Gray, and Jackie Young actually rested for a game in New York, which we'll talk about a little bit more. So I'm really eager to see how Washington shows up, because I do think that Vegas is going to show up in a big way, especially after dropping back-to-back games.
Yeah, that's normally what they do, right? When they come out swinging, and we'll definitely see that. I just also want to give a shout out to Kiki Ariafin, who became the 7th youngest player to reach 1,000 career WNBA points. So listen, come on, Washington. We see what you're doing. And we see you also, Kiki, and it'll be really interesting to see how that continues to develop as we go down the stretch here in the WNBA. Now for Indiana, they actually just signed center Mercedes Russell to their team. This was something, we had talked about them having like a spot. We were really interested to see who they would fill with that. This is a former number 22 pick in the 2018 WNBA draft, played with Seattle from 2018 to 24, helped the Storm to 2018 and 2020 WNBA championships, and played 20 games with the Sparks last season. What do you think about this pickup for the Indiana Fever?
Well, we know that without Damidas Dantas, they were likely going to need another center, someone just to help bring some size when they have when they have teams with a lot of size that they're going to be playing. And, I think that she's been out of the league for a little while, so it's going to be interesting to see what that looks like. She was in Seattle, went to LA for a little bit, a short stint, but hasn't really been able to find a footing in the WNBA. This is a short stint, though, and it is because of an injury to Dantas. So I guess we'll see how this is able to, just help stabilize what Indiana wants to do, especially knowing that Aaliyah Boston has missed some games this season.
Yeah, all of these moves are so interesting as we get to the road to the finals. It's definitely here. So, definitely a signing that we'll see how important it is to Indiana, but something that they definitely needed to do. So, shout out to Mercedes Russell for being on the team. I mean, that's a huge feat in itself. So we've talked about player stories, and we'll see. Maybe there's a story there. So we definitely had a story, though, on CBS, and that was the game that we previewed right here on We Need to Talk Now. The Minnesota Lynx and Las Vegas Aces, and the Minnesota Lynx ended up winning over the Aces 98-87. There were so many storylines in this, but I would say Olivia Miles is the biggest one. When you're watching that game, you just can't help but to see the magic Miles of it all. Led the Lynx with 26 points on 11 and 23 shooting, scored or assisted on 44 of Minnesota's 98 points. Insane. Scored against 4 different primary defenders, right? Shot 6 and 8 with Jackie Young and Jewel Lloyd as primary defenders. The Lynx in general shot 7 of 12, 4 and 4 from the 3-point line for 18 points off of Miles' passes. And Miles becomes the fastest player to reach 600 points and 150 assists in WNBA history. Wow. I mean, what more can you say about Olivia Miles? In this same game, Asia Wilson was limited to 16 points with 5 turnovers, which is obviously uncharacteristic of her. Just the second time in Wilson's career that she scored 16 or fewer points with at least 5 turnovers in a game. But does this kind of shift? A lot of people were saying this afterwards, kind of shift the MVP debate at all?
Shift seems the wrong word for me. Does it help make a stronger case for Olivia Miles? Sure. I think for me, it's really tough to be an MVP, as we've seen historically, as a backcourt player. Whether I agree with that or not, I would say absolutely no, I do not agree with that. So, I think what Olivia Miles has been able to do is phenomenal. And that's why there's really not much competition when it comes to her being Rookie of the Year. Of course, we don't know how everything is going to shake out. But when it comes to MVP, this is what I will say, perhaps to add something to that part of the conversation. Olivia Miles, and I said this earlier on CBS Sports HQ, Olivia Miles went from Notre Dame to TCU. And for me, her being able to take command of the offense, learning all of the assignments and run the offense in her first year at TCU, for me, as someone who is on the Nancy Lieberman awards committee, that really stood out to me. And I think that is also what I want to add as far as Olivia Miles keeping a Minnesota team that I am one of them. I'm going to be honest. Without Nafisa Collier, I didn't know what we were going to get from Minnesota. And then Olivia Miles is like, hold my spectacles, hold my goggles, because I got this. And I think that's huge. For me, I say it all the time, Alicia. MVP is not best player, best team. It can be, but it's not an automatic best player, best team. It's not the person who's only that's scoring the most points. It is the person who is most valuable to their team. And the fact that Olivia Miles happens to be on the first team to clinch, the top team in the standings, that she's also a rookie, that she's a top performer, a top scorer, while also facilitating the rest of the offense. If you wanted to really be critical how much of that offense is coming from her versus her playmaking, maybe that's a conversation really to dig into. Comparative to Asia Wilson, who doesn't have the ball in her hands, but it still commands the ball because of what the Aces do, or a Brianna Stewart, who's a little bit of a hybrid of the three of them. For me, those are the players that I'm looking at. I think you can add Kelsey Mitchell to that mix as well. Where is Indiana without a Kelsey Mitchell, really, since her career began? But I think, yeah, it does bring up it illuminates, is what I would like to say, some things that we've seen from Olivia Miles because of the way they played against Las Vegas in their most recent outing.
Yeah, definitely illuminates it. What the Lynx are doing is amazing. So when you talk about being on the top team, the top player, all of that, what they're doing is amazing. But also, I think two things can be true at once here. I don't think it shifts from Asia Wilson because we see what she's doing. We see the numbers every night. Yeah, she had a game that was very uncharacteristic of her. Do I think she'll have another game like that? No, I do not. However, I think she's still, you got to talk about her as being the front runner for the MVP. But what Olivia Miles is doing is making a huge case for herself too. So shift is probably not the word I would use either in this situation, but I think you definitely see her cases going up and up and up, right?
Yeah, and for me,
with every game.
The only thing I disagree with is, and I have not this season at all, considered it Asia Wilson's to lose necessarily, because again, the valuable for me is important. Asia Wilson is extremely valuable, and we're seeing value be classified in other ways: Miles, Stewart, Mitchell, etc. So, I think, and just knowing how the vote usually goes and what MVP means for the masses as compared to individual people. I do think most people probably still do have A'ja Wilson as the front runner. And again, that's why I like this conversation. I like what we're seeing from Olivia Miles. I like that we're seeing Minnesota, if not for that loss against the Sparks, they would have the longest winning streak here. But again, I'll say this before, A'ja Wilson threw that best player, best team thing out the window a few years ago.
Yeah.
En route to, I believe at the time it was her third MVP. So just y'all remember that. It can't be, we can't be selective here. Is it best player, best teams always and forever? Or is it only, when it fits who you actually want to give the MVP to? And either way is fine, but just, I like people to keep it consistent. For me, I'm gonna pull a Sue Bird and I'm gonna be like, I'm gonna make the decision when I have to make the decision. That's a throwback to just last week when she talked about making that Team USA roster.
Listen, there's a lot of decisions to be made, that's for sure, as we go down this season with the W. But we want to make sure that you put your comments in here. Talk about that MVP race in the comments. We want to see what you have to say. And why don't you just do it right now during this break? And we'll see you right after.
You think you understand how this business works, but you don't.
I now know why Mommy was so stressed.
What's the plan here?
Landman. New season now streaming. Only on Paramount Plus.
Hold on now. I didn't know Landman, the new season was streaming. I'm gonna go check that out after this. That's my show right there.
I love me some Landman.
Man, come on, Landman. Such good storytelling. Well, anyways, we got some stories to tell here too. We just talked about Olivia Miles and the history that she seems to literally make every single night. And there was a lot of WNBA history and news made over the weekend, starting with the news that unfortunately we keep seeing in the W, and that is around officiating. DiJonai Carrington was ejected for a hard foul on Sophie Cunningham. And a lot of people, including me and us, are saying that the league is not getting it right. Let's just start by playing the clip of the actual hard foul.
Cunningham up ahead of the field, lays it in, plus the foul, and then Cunningham gets into the face of DiJonai Carrington right away in the aftermath.
DiJonai Carrington and Sophie Cunningham comes down, gets her right across the face, coming down trying to prevent the layup, but that is just a hard hit. That's definitely.
Now, I want to say there were a lot of reactions to this, obviously, and I just wanted to bring up Steph White's comments first.
There was Sophie's flagrant foul.
Yeah.
Just what was your reaction to that? And just your thoughts on what happened?
Yeah, I mean, look, it was a hard foul. I don't think that DiJonai intentionally came out to get her across the neck like she did, but it did happen, and I thought it was the right call. But one of the things about Nay is that she's going to play her butt off, man. She's going to compete. Nobody's going to go walking in for a layup, and so I don't oppose the hard foul, but I also don't think that she intentionally went for the neck.
That's what Steph White had to say. And then Sophie Cunningham had to say, clearly, I think it was like unnecessary. I've never really spoken to her and have no beef with her, but I guess she has some pent up stuff. So like, get your SHIT off. That's fine. I can take it. But when it comes to, what was unnecessary or what she thinks is unnecessary, we just want to play this clip with her and JC Sheldon last season.
That's a flagrant foul. It's a hard foul. You could say it's a play on the ball, but
yeah, I think no question this will get upgraded.
yeah, no question.
2 arms above the shoulders. And again, intent is not part of this rule. Cunningham.
It's the security that are getting in to break it up, not the officials.
And for those of you who could not see that clip, if you do want to see it, please make your way over to YouTube. But it was definitely a hard foul. It was definitely something, if she wants to call would this happen unnecessary, it was unnecessary. And I also wanted to point out too, in the clip that we saw that just occurred, that everybody is talking about right now, Sophie Cunningham also reacted. And she slapped the neck of DiJonai Carrington and nothing was done when it came to her. So looking at this conversation, looking at the ejection of DiJonai Carrington, looking at this whole situation, what are your thoughts on just the officiating overall? We've had so many conversations around it, but this is another example of what we've been talking about, Erica.
It's the last piece for me. It's the fact that when Sophie Cunningham was fouled, or when Sophie Cunningham fouled JC Sheldon, JC reacted, and both of them were taken out of the game, as I recall. The situation we heard from the pool report after the game, the pool reporter asked the officials about that, and the comment that we got after Sophie Cunningham was fouled and then hits DiJonai Carrington in the neck is, and this is from crew chief Maj Forberg, says that the contact was unnecessary and excessive for the player in the vulnerable position. That was, of course, Sophie Cunningham. But then they went on to say that Sophie Cunningham's reaction was acceptable. So I'm just trying to understand, how is it that Sophie reacting to DiJonai was acceptable, but JC reacting to Sophie's hard foul last year apparently was not? That's just a little wild to me. I don't think that makes a lot of sense. Both of those were very hard fouls. I would argue that DiJonai's was a hard foul, definitely meant to stop her from scoring a bucket, but not meant to necessarily make direct contact to the neck. With Sophie Cunningham, whether she meant to or not, she definitely leaned into the fact that she did it on purpose, and even got this bad girl reputation as being a quote unquote enforcer in basketball, which is ridiculous on so many levels, because this is basketball and not hockey. And don't even get me started on how I feel about hockey fights and enforcing. So that's the part. It's really that last part to me, the reaction of the fouled player, the player that had the hard foul on them reacting. That to me is really what stood out, and why I'm like, okay, so now retaliation is acceptable? That's the precedent that we're setting? I'm not with that.
Yeah, I'm not with that at all. And it just speaks more over to the inconsistencies on all levels in this officiating. Another example would be Caitlin Clark. She had a technical rescinded and avoids a 1-game suspension because it would have been over the threshold for her in technicals for the season. But I don't know if we have this, Emma, if we have this clip, but basically she was in play, was doing something with the ball, and runs into the ref. Now, to me, I was glad they rescinded this, because it was literally within play. It happens. The ref happens to be there. She just basically was giving her, space of like, I'm right here kind of thing. As far as it wasn't anything malicious. She didn't do anything in this case, in this specific technical, which was called on her. And so I personally was glad that they rescinded this, but it also speaks to the overall inconsistencies that are happening when it comes to refereeing in the WNBA.
Right. And I said the exact same thing as we were getting ready for the podcast. Like, Caitlin Clark, she was bumped out of bounds by Natasha Cloud, who was the defender. And you do see Clark kind of motion her hand towards the official. And for me, it was more of, and I do this when I walk in New York City streets. It's like, hey, I'm here, like, because I don't want you to hit me with force, or vice versa. So just kind of like, hey, I'm here. And so making contact with an official, though, has been one of the things that also has been extremely inconsistent. I can remember several years back, and I think we also have this clip of Astu Ndu, who at the time was playing for the Chicago Sky, and she was arguing that there was a foul call, and she was indicating that she had marks on her arm. And so Allie Quigley was still in the league at the time, and the official is looking and talking to Allie Quigley, and Astu Ndu is coming from the other way and is going to show her arm. The official walks into, Astu Ndu was already ahead of them. The official walks into Astu, turns around, as if, he was hit by a car or something, and immediately tees her up, tosses her out. And that was also rescinded. So I do think that the league in both situations after the fact made the right call. Officials and players make contact. I remember there was a time where an official effectively set a screen on Rebecca Gardner that led to an opponent scoring, and nothing was done. Like, the call wasn't blown dead or anything, so contact with an official is going to happen. All contact to an official is not egregious. It's not intentional. It's not an offense. And so I do think in this case for Clark, that was the good call, the right call to rescind that. I do think that the expedience with which that was rescinded, I don't think I have ever seen in the WNBA, because it took a while even for us to undo to get that rescinded. And I do think it was the right call there. So again, it's just like a player like Caitlin Clark getting into the referee's face, getting worked up about things, that's been a part of her game. And this wasn't the right call, in my opinion. It was not anything egregious. She wasn't cursing anybody out. It wasn't, kind of the strong arm that we sometimes do see her utilize, and where she'll then push off. This wasn't that at all. So I think they made the right call after the fact, but it created a firestorm, because anytime Caitlin Clark and fouling is a part of a conversation, we might get a special congressional session. So, there was that part of it.
Yeah. So many, I don't know. It's here, there, and everywhere. People should get calls that aren't. They're getting calls. We're sending them quickly. It's so much. And there's so much amazing basketball. I just want to focus on the amazing basketball of it all. But we have all of this because clearly the officiating still needs to be retooled in a lot of different ways. But one person who doesn't need to retool anything is Kayla McBride, because she is balling. We know she's a baller. We've talked about her being really, really underrated in a lot of different ways, just for her play in general over her career. But she had a historic game, set the single game 3-point hit record, hit a WNBA record, 10 threes in the Lynx 103-90 win over Dallas. Made 10 of 14 shots from beyond the arc, finished with a career high 43 points. And she actually had something to say that I thought was really good about choosing to come back to the Minnesota Lynx.
When you were taking free agency visits, did you ever think you'd be giving Cheryl Reeve a chest bump at midcourt?
Oh, yeah. I knew when we walked off last year against Phoenix, and I told her this after the game, after we lost in Phoenix. I said, I can't imagine walking off, even in defeat, in another jersey. I can't imagine that. Like, that's how much pride and, love I had for the jersey that I had on. And so, yeah, obviously free agency is, a scary time, and 80% of the league was in free agency. And so I was obviously contemplating, but I knew where my heart was. And I think I always went back to that moment of, that feeling. I'm like, I don't think I can feel that for another team. And that's what I base it on. Just that it didn't matter what this season looked like. We didn't know what it was going to look like. Well, everybody else didn't know what it was going to look like. And so I think that pride that I have and going through the hardest of hard times with this organization is why I wanted to come back and be in this position that I'm in right now. Because it's not about knowing what's going to happen. It's about going through it with the people that you care about and the organization that you care about. And that's where my heart is, and that's where the passion comes from, and why you want to play and get up on a back-to-back 2 games in 24 hours. That's the motivation. And so going back to those moments, I'm always reminded that I made the right decision.
Well, and that really just speaks to overall what we've been saying is just, it's amazing what they have been able to do this season. Just like she said, they didn't know what was going to happen this season. We didn't know what was going to happen this season, but certainly on all fronts, it's worked out for everybody on the team, including her. She's also the oldest player in WNBA history with 9+ 3-pointers made in a game. She actually had a really funny clip that was going around where she said she's dang near 40, which
I'm damn near 40 out here. What? Stop playing with me. I'm your mama's age, bro. I'm your mama's age, man. Stop.
You are not dang near 40. I think you're 34 years old. That's not dang near 40, number one, but also that she was old enough to be their mama, which is also hilarious. But definitely love to see this on every level, Erica. I love to see this for her. I love to see this for the team, and I love to see that it's working out for everybody.
Yeah, Kayla McBride is someone that when we had our pregame show for the Saturday matchup, I was like, yep, it's time to call her a number. She is critical to what this team does. She's been there for a while. She talked about it a little bit in that clip that we just played, but she said before, you know, coming to Minnesota, she found her game back. She found the joy and the love for the game again. She had lost that. I think she was going through in Vegas a time where it wasn't exactly clear what her role was going to be, how she was going to impact that team, and she found that again in Minnesota. And even when there was uncertainty, she knew what it felt like to play in Minnesota and wanted to stick with that. And having a game like that is a milestone in the league for her career, and of course was huge for Minnesota, who was also on a back-to-back. Now they were at home for both of those games, and they had a full 24 hours plus a couple of hours between games, because unfortunately that is not what happened with the Vegas Aces. But anyway, I love this for Kayla McBride.
Love it for Kayla McBride. I also love to see Marine Johannes, career high 27 points in the Liberty's 40-point win over the Aces, made 7 threes in less than 22 minutes and joins Renee Montgomery and Waquana Williams as the only other WNBA players to do so. I mean, history all around. And this is not very historic, but unfortunately, Seattle has been eliminated from playoffs contention. I've said on this pod, I thought they were going to be great this season. I'm actually still shocked by just how it has panned out with all of I know it's young talent. I know they're still building, but I believed in you. I believed in you, Seattle. And I know it's got to be frustrating to have that. But are there any reasons to be optimistic when you look at this team? I mean, I personally, you know how I feel, but I just think there's so much talent there, Erica.
I mean, there's plenty of reasons to be optimistic, and I just don't think it was realistic for them to be a playoff team this year. I still have a lot of questions about what they're doing when it comes to the backcourt. I think that we're seeing great games from Jade Melvin, from Natisha Heidemann. I would love to see more Zaya Cook. There are Let Zaya Cook chants and different posts going up. However, you need someone who is going to be able to bring a veteran presence and command the offense in a way that we just haven't been able to see from Jade Melvin, who's been a role player in the WNBA, or Natisha Heidemann, who has been a role player in the WNBA. So the good news is that you have Awa Pham, you have Dominique Malunga, you have Lajee Johnson, and they're getting these, they're getting this experience together. And so that's effectively your core. What you need now is someone who can be a floor general in a way that is required on a day in and day out basis. And I just think that was pretty clear to me that it's great for Natisha Heidemann to step into an expanded role, and her facilitation versus what she's able to do as a true scorer, I see her more as a 2 if she's going to be a starter, not as a floor general. And so I think what you are looking to see for this Seattle team is put Awa Pham, Dominique Malunga, Lajee Johnson, and Ezzy Magbagor on the court at the same time. You're already eliminated. You don't need to win or lose games. It really doesn't matter at this point. What you need to be able to do is build chemistry. And I go back to what Sandy Brondello did really in the 2023 New York Liberty season. She said, I will take all of the critiques and criticism because my goal is to get the starting 5 chemistry, building that chemistry. I will keep them in games. I will start them in games. I will keep a tight bench, and I will take all of the licks that come my way because they need to know how to play together. By the next year, they were champions. And I will say what I loved about that championship is that also you needed the role players, you needed the bench players to come and play very specific and significant minutes. And Sandy Brondello was able to build that in 2024 because she focused on the starters in 2023. That's what I see happening in Seattle. I also think Sonia Roman is the kind of coach who I want to see her bring out some more sandpaper. Again, season, we know it ends in the last regular season game of the year. So why not also push buttons on how you're communicating with your team when it comes to really energizing them, when it comes to kind of getting in their face, whatever that looks like, whatever that version is for her as a coach first and foremost, and also whatever it's going to be and how her players respond. I think that when you have a young team, sometimes you have to fabricate energy for them. We see Sydney Johnson doing that in a positive way, right? And jumping around, screaming, winding up his arms, diving on the floor, because you need to, there's all this energy. Young people have so much energy, and you need to then harness it. And you can do that by being as energetic or arguably more energetic than them. And sometimes, depending on the people, depending on the personnel, you also need to get in their face when things aren't working out. Cheryl Reeve was like, oh, you're asking me why the defense wasn't good enough because everyone who set foot on the court didn't play defense. Oh, well, are you talking perimeter defense? Or are you talking she said everybody, 1 through 5, everybody who stepped on the court did not play good enough defense. And sometimes you need to get real with people as well. And so I don't know what that looks like behind closed doors for Sonia. And it just seems like that's an opportunity for her to figure out what is the best communication style for her young core. How can she empower them and be right there, in the trenches with them, be as excited as they are to play together, and balance that so that they're getting what they need. They're getting that focus, but they're also getting the freedom to be who they are.
Yeah, it's certainly a good time to do that, right? Like you said, they already know that the season is going to end when the season ends, and they have some games that they can play around and retool. Speaking to what you said about, Awa and Dom being on the court at the same time with, the rest of the players, the starting 5 that you talked about. In the minutes that Awa and Dom have been on the court together, their offensive rating has gone from 102.3 to 111.3. So when you talk about, what else can you say on that? So play around with that, see what happens. I have to admit, I was completely wrong about the Seattle team this year, but I do know that they have a bright future ahead of them. That I do know. With the players that are on there, and like you said, even Sonia Rahman, kind of figuring out her coaching style with this too. But once they have that, maybe like another key piece on the team, they're going to be dangerous. They really are. I stand by that. I was wrong about the playoffs this year, but I stand by that when it comes to Seattle. So we'll definitely keep tabs on the team and what they're doing, and we'll see how they play out the rest of the season, because every game is still important, regardless of if you're going to the playoffs or not, for your future. That is one thing that you can guarantee. And speaking of guarantees, we have the guarantee of the week presented by AT&T, America's best guarantee. And this one is going to be a little different. I think it's not really guaranteeing like a team going to the playoffs or anything like that, but we have seen that there has been with we talked about the Aces and everything that they have been going through with their schedule and how many games they played in a row. I think there was a stat in the weekend that said they played 2 games within 24 hours, which is insane. Like the games, were played within a 24-hour span too.
It was Minnesota and New York. They flew from Minnesota to New York. 1 p.m. tip-off on CBS on Saturday, a 12:30 tip-off on Sunday.
Which is crazy. And Becky Hammon, questioned the scheduling, saying that her players' health is more important. You have to be healthy and fresh as much as possible. Obviously, after going through a season, so the health and safety of the players comes first. Everyone has a brutal schedule at some point. And I don't even think they do this in the NBA, though. And she went on to talk more about, players getting hurt, and like, it is what it is. But she, in response to this in the schedule, she did sit her starters. And we saw that the Aces got blown out by 40 points with Chelsea Gray, Asia Wilson, and Jackie Young all resting. The team had played, as we talked about, Minnesota less than 24 hours prior. So when you look at this and kind of their schedule that they have going down the stretch, I mean, Mystics tomorrow, Mystics Thursday, Lynx on Saturday, Dream on Tuesday, the Sun on Thursday, so on and so forth. You got the Tempo twice, you have the Storm twice, Sparks and Mercury. So when you look at this to kind of close out the season and who they're playing, what we want to guarantee here is like how many out of the last 11 games will Asia Wilson, Aces starter, play in those games? So how many of those games will the starters be playing in those 11 games? What are your thoughts on that, Erica?
Well, I think there's at least 4 games that I can see out of the 11 where you're going to need starts and significant games from your starters. It starts with Washington, the 2 games against the Washington Mystics, Minnesota again on CBS on Saturday, which is going to be exciting, and then the Atlanta Dream. I think you're going to need to see your full roster there. Now, the other teams, especially given that we've also heard Becky Hammon say that, getting home court advantage, or maybe even the 1 seed over the 2 seed, the 3 or the 4, because all of those teams will have home court advantage. That's not a huge concern. So if you're looking at, there's going to be wear and tear, not just because of this season and the back-to-back where you had Minnesota, you had just played Indiana also in an overtime game. So that's also you have to add to the mix here. You wanted those games and try to get the head-to-head against Indiana, against Minnesota, because you want to clinch. The earlier you clinch, then you're like, okay, I'm good with however it shakes, right? They need about 4 games, whether that's 4 wins for them or 2 losses each between, I believe it's LA and Portland. That's what's going to clinch them the next spot in the playoffs. So Washington, the 2 Washington games, Minnesota, Atlanta, I would say I expect to see them at full tilt. Now, after that, you play Seattle twice. We just talked about Seattle ain't going nowhere. Not this year. Wait till next year, baby. They're not advancing. Toronto is not in a position right now to advance. The Sparks and Phoenix, those are teams where you know what? I have a lot of questions about the Vegas bench. Maybe this goes back to what I was saying about Sandy Brondello, but it's the opposite. If you clinch, if you're worried about fatigue, especially knowing that there's a World Cup, and USA named Brianna Stewart. Well, let's just talk about the aces. They named all 3 aces that sat on Sunday to the USA team. So this break that we're getting in WNBA action is not a break for Chelsea Gray, is not a break for Jackie Young, is not a break for A'ja Wilson. So when you compound that, they're not maybe worried about where they're going to be in the seeding. They want to make sure they have their players rested, and perhaps you have an opportunity to give some run to players that you're going to need for them to know what they need to do if and when their number is called. So I think that I would say I'm guaranteeing for our AT&T guarantee, I'm guaranteeing that we see the full Aces roster for at least the next 4 games. After that, I don't know if I can guarantee much more, Alicia.
Yeah, I would say the same thing. No notes on that. Looking at the schedule, it's almost like, why would you put that on the players when, and no offense to the teams that they're playing, but it is what it is. And so why would you put that on your team? And I think too, maybe we should talk about this more in a future episode, maybe on Thursday. I just think that break is something that we need to talk more about that is going to happen at this point in the season. You talk about them not getting a break because they're going to play for the World Cup. That to me is even, it's more rigorous, right? Because you're in a schedule that you're not normally in. You're playing like a whole different type of basketball in a way. And so, I feel like we should probably talk about that even more, because that break is going to be a thing for a lot of these teams, if not all of them in some way, but some way more than others, I would say. And especially when you're talking about these players on this specific team, right? So I don't know. I just think we need to talk more about that break. But yeah, given the break, given where they're at right now and what they're going through, and the bench, the lack of the bench, as we've talked about, I could definitely see that whole last part sitting them out, and I wouldn't be mad at it either.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we'll keep you updated on that. We'll see how that shakes out. And another thing we wanted to keep you updated on is the WNBA is going to be discussing transgender athlete participation this week. After Indiana Fever guard Sophie Cunningham recently voiced support for barring transgender women from participating in women's sports, the WNBA has addressed transgender athlete participation this week in a memo saying, Kathy Engelbert actually addressed it in the memo. I know many of you have received questions in recent weeks regarding transgender athlete participation in women's basketball, and I expect this topic will continue to receive significant attention. I wanted to reach out to share how we are approaching these conversations at the league office and to thank those of you who have responded to questions from the media with thoughtfulness and professionalism. The topic will be discussed at a previously scheduled meeting with the team's presidents and GMs this week as well. Engelbert also said that the league will always approach this topic thoughtfully, respectfully, and in alignment with the longstanding values of our league. Second, our player eligibility rules, unlike the eligibility rules of some other leagues and governing bodies, are collectively bargained. Lastly, preserving the integrity of our game and ensuring fair competition will always remain among the league's highest priorities. The WNBPA also issued a statement on Friday. The WNBPA represents 200 plus individual people with different lived experiences, cultures, lifestyles, and opinions. We embrace justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. Those are the values that unite this union and allow it to protect women's sports while creating transformational change. Hate, abuse, and demonetization of any person or group of people, including transgender people, only fuel fear, division, and harm. We will continue to have hard conversations, but we will not be used as political pawns. So we wanted to keep you updated on that movement in the league, and we will certainly keep you updated as it continues to be talked about within, the league, these conversations and all the ways that this is being talked about within the WNBA. So listen, that was a lot. That was a lot to digest, whether it be the news, what's happening in the league, or what's happening in the case with transgender women. And I just want to say we do our best. We know that we don't always get it right, but we really appreciate you guys being here every single time to listen, contribute in your way, make your comments, lock in with us so that we can always continue to have these conversations right here, because that's why we're here, to do that in women's sports and certainly in the WNBA. So make sure you're locked in, and we will be right back here with you on Thursday for We Need to Talk Now, presented by AT&T.